Wise Way Learning presents the lecture number 81 to 86 under section 16. This is a complete project management free course from beginner to project manager with 19 sections of 100 lectures. Welcome to the course. Section 16 and lecture number 81 to 86, the Agile Project Management. This section includes the lectures such as Lecture 81 Introduction Waterfall, Lecture 82 Different Kind of Projects, Lecture 83 Where Waterfall Falls Short, Lecture 84 Introduction to Agile, Lecture 85 Agile Project Structure, Lecture 86 Product Development in Agile. Section 16 and lecture number 81, Introduction to Waterfall.
Alright, we can now say that we are experts in the traditional sense of project management. We know how any project could align with the conventional life cycle of initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and control, and closure. The very essence of this framework is in the strict separation between the planning and execution phases. We plan 100% of the work before starting the execution. And during said execution, we aim to complete 100% of the work with minimum changes to the plan. The activities throughout the execution phase are themselves strictly defined, estimated and sequenced. We know exactly when they should start and when they should finish. We know what follows each task and which are performed in parallel. The structure is referred to as waterfall structure, as every stage flows to the next, and once a stage or phase is complete, you rarely go back to it. If a change to the plan is required for any reason, it has to go through a formal change process. First, the impact of the change on the triple constraint must be evaluated. A detailed change request document containing all this information must then be created, after which it will be submitted to the project sponsor for approval or not. If approved, it is essential that the project manager update the plan, communicate with the team and coordinate the change. We already know this from the change management lesson in the monitoring and control chapter. Applying the traditional or waterfall framework when managing projects certainly provides many benefits, like giving a clear project plan for the upcoming months, which reduces the coordination efforts needed and the risk of misunderstandings. The cost of change is under control. You remember the cost of change, right? Changes create project inefficiencies. Enables the team to focus on the work and build momentum, etc. Now, it goes without saying, again, that projects are different. Certain ones can be more easily defined in advance, and the effect of the uncertainties can be mitigated with minimal disruption. In such project types, hard dependencies exist between the main deliverables. The construction of our showroom is a good example, where the work is connected by hard or logical dependencies. Foundations need to be constructed before you can build the ground floor. Once done, the second floor can be built, and only then can you construct the roof. With the roof in place, you can start working on the interiors, and so on. You get it. Clearly, you cannot start with the roof. In this kind of project, there is usually one best way to lay out your plan, and there is a very good chance the plan is then executed without many conceptual changes. Waterfall project management is suited nicely to such endeavors. There are, however, other types of initiatives that are difficult to define in a clear manner, and uncertainties cannot be so well managed. Such projects would also have fewer hard dependencies between the main deliverables. The activities can be ordered in various ways, and the best one would be difficult to know in advance. For example, if your project is about creating a visualization of the showroom for the website, you could theoretically start with the roof, right? The nature of the work will be very different from the physical construction of the building. The dependencies between deliverables, the estimates and assumptions, the risks, the client expectations, and so on. Planning the whole project in detail and then trying to execute it without many changes would be much more difficult. Let's see a more detailed example of such a project in the next video. See you there.
Section 16 and lecture number 82, Different Kind of Projects.
Welcome back. Let's look at the following case. It's about Ray's neighbor, Bill. He wants to install smart home features to his flat. He saw some innovative designs at a friend's house where the family could switch on the apartment's heating remotely from their smartphones while travelling back from a weekend away. So it will already be warm and cozy when they arrive home. The project goal is clear: make Bill's home more convenient and smart. Great. Time for planning. The work is new territory for everyone, so Ray sets aside about a month for her planning. The project team includes one engineer, Leah, who will be doing the magic. After some time, the project plan is completed and the confirmed scope includes the following features: remote control of the TV and music player, lights, and air conditioning. The total project is to be completed in 4 months. Bill will be travelling a lot for business, so the house will be mostly free for Leah to work on the project execution. So she starts. Before connecting these devices, Leah will need to program the basics of the application software. During the first month, everything goes well, and Leah completes the basic programming. The work continues with the integration of TV and music. Some small challenges present themselves in the technical work, however, Leah manages to catch up and eventually complete it on time. She moves on to the light control. After working for a few weeks on this feature, Bill comes back and the team gathers to review the created functionality. While reviewing the TV and music control, Bill figures out that parental controls should be added to the entire smart home system, so the kids can control the TV and lights but not things like air conditioning and music. After all, most kids have a taste of music that parents usually find unbearable. The project team gathers to discuss. Leah explains she will not be able to do that and still complete the project within time and budget. Bill thinks about it and says, "You know what? You can leave the lights for now. Parental control is much more important to me than light control. After all, the latter doesn't bring that much value." Leah responds, "That's okay, but what do we do with the work I already did on light control?" Bill confirms, "Well, let's just leave it for now." Change process rolls again, and Ray makes all the necessary amendments to the plan. Bill departs again to attend an interesting conference, including an exhibition of smart home devices. Seems he is indeed passionate about the topic. Back in the house, Leah starts working on the final feature: air conditioning control. After all, she finds out that the air conditioning device has different software and is not compatible with the smart home application. Leah goes to Ray and shares the issue. She explains the only option is to do this integration, which will take additional time and budget. Change process rolls again as we know it, and Bill approves this over the phone as this is a key feature he desires. Just before the end of the execution, Bill comes back to see the project result. As the team prepares to review the project process together, Bill turns to Ray with another surprise. On the exhibition he attended, he bought an innovative product, a home assistant device. This gadget executes voice commands from distance. Bill found this very useful and now wants this incorporated into the project. Ray, Bill and Leah have no choice but to go through the change process. Unfortunately, to incorporate it, Lee will need to go back and do some adjustments to the very basic programming she did during the first month. It will take her at least an extra week. But this new gadget seems to be really useful, so the additional time and cost are approved. Finally, after the new device is integrated by Leah, the three gather to review the final product. Ray is happy that after all the changes they can finally show the application to Bill and close the project. After a few minutes, Bill doesn't seem very satisfied with what he sees. He doesn't find the interface colors and the buttons positioned user-friendly and intuitive. Ray explains to Bill that he did not specify this requirement during the planning. He admits this, but nevertheless explains he could not predict it and only realized it now when seeing the final product. The news gets even worse when Leah explains that this is a major change and she would practically need another month to execute it. This, of course, means further increase in the budget, which does not appeal to Bill. Leah says, If only I knew about this in the first 2 months, it would have been done so easily. The additional costs become too big and Bill decides to stick with the current version regardless. The project is finally completed. Phew, not an easy project for Ray. All the changes to the requirements we observed are positive and essential to the end goal, which is making Bill's home more convenient and smart. However, they lead to significant project inefficiencies, delays, additional costs, wasted work, and worst of all, an unhappy customer. In our next lesson, we will analyze what differentiates such projects from the traditional ones and why waterfall project management may not be the best methodology to apply. See you in a bit.
Section 16 and lecture number 83, Where Waterfall Falls Short.
In the last lesson, we saw an example of a project that is quite different from the traditional ones which we have been discussing in the course so far. These non-traditional projects and initiatives in general are less predictable in nature and more difficult to structure and control. Let's now look at the common characteristics of this kind of initiative from a project management perspective and understand what we need to consider when managing them. 1. Detailed planning is not beneficial in advance. All projects deal with future events and there is always a degree of uncertainty. The analysis of risks, assumptions, and expectations performed during planning aims to minimize the effect of uncertainties. In some cases, however, the uncertainties are too big or too many to predict all scenarios. Hence, you cannot create a detailed project plan in advance, even if you spend years trying. This is especially the case when something new is being created. A new product, new technology and innovation, research and development initiatives, scientific experiments, the list goes on. Often, you need to see the result from the first steps of the project before you can decide the best way to proceed with the steps that follow afterwards. The reason can also be external to the organization, like waiting for a competitor's move or a regulation, where timing falls somewhere during the project. In such cases, it simply does not make sense to invest too much time and effort in detailed planning. Why plan the details for step 2 when you need the results from step 1 to do it well? 2. Requirements evolve during execution. Even if you produce a detailed plan, the client requirements are likely to change during the execution. In software projects, for instance, the future users can rarely imagine well enough what the system will look like and how they will be working with it. Only when the product becomes real and they start experimenting, users can understand it in practice. This is usually a moment when new requirements emerge, and it could happen very late in the execution. Website design is a classic example. Never in the history of the internet has anyone been happy with the first version. 3. Technology and software surprises. The technical side may include some hidden dependencies, which you cannot catch during the planning. With software projects, you can actually start with building the roof first and not follow the hard dependencies we face in other traditional projects. Furthermore, software code is something quite unique for each software product. Findings often come up only once the technical teams start working on the very details. The combination of different systems, people and expectations is something that often brings new considerations to the project manager's table only after the actual work has started. 4. Professionals from different fields in one project team. In technology-related projects especially, the technical team's perspective may vary from the one of the client, as these stakeholders have different perspectives and often speak different languages. This can lead to output that doesn't meet the exact needs or preferences of the customer. If business and technical teams are not working closely together, the risk of misunderstandings becomes significant. Okay. With these details, it is now much clearer what differentiates these other types of projects and initiatives from the traditional ones. With such uncertainties into the picture, you can imagine it doesn't make much sense to spend the majority of your time planning for something that has a high likelihood to change. A rigid project management framework doesn't seem to be helping us here. Not only that, but it would actually create more difficulties as the constant changes to the plan increase the project bureaucracy. This consumes not only time for documentation and approvals, but also distracts the focus of the project manager, sponsor, and client. The waiting time related to various approvals impacts the project team efficiency and often leads to decreased team morale and motivation. The underlying reasons are that the nature of these initiatives is often in conflict with principles of the waterfall project management methodology. So what to do in these cases? Here is where Agile comes with a solution. Join us in the next lesson where we will introduce the Agile framework.
Section 16 and lecture number 84, Introduction to Agile.
In 2001, a group of software development professionals gathered in a ski resort in Utah, US, to brainstorm better ways of doing their professional work, and of course to ski and enjoy the vacation. The predominant project approach for developing software at that time had still been highly structured and documentation driven with heavyweight processes. Their goal had been to define an approach that is more pragmatic and will work better for their needs. So this gathering produced the famous Agile Manifesto. Let's read it. We are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Through this work, we have come to value working software over comprehensive documentation, individuals and interactions over processes and tools, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan. That is, while there is value in the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. This sounds great, but we need to admit it is a bit general. Maybe that's why, as a term, there are quite many occasions when Agile is used to attract attention. For example, to make a given product, project or company look better and up to speed with the latest trends. Often in these cases, Agile is used without any practical meaning. Hence, you need to be careful when you see it or hear it flying around with no context. Alright, so what is Agile? Agile is not a specific rule, strict methodology, or a proof of high quality. It is more of a philosophy, a mindset, a general guideline of how to be more efficient when working in certain environments. Agile introduces values, as the ones in the manifesto, which can guide teams when performing a given work, be it process or project. Behind this manifesto, there are 12 Agile principles that provide more details to the concept. We will not read them here on purpose, as we will review what is most important from our perspective, project management. You can, of course, find and read the complete list in the lesson materials. Having said that, let's put Agile into our context and see how it applies to project management and also how it differentiates from waterfall project management. 1. Planning. Execution activities can start without a complete project plan. We are still talking about project management, so there will always be planning and execution activities going on. In Agile, however, the rule of starting execution only when everything is planned in detail is abolished. As we saw earlier, in certain projects it would be really difficult to produce a detailed plan, as we know planning is something that consumes time and resources. Hence, Agile suggests that when further planning is not beneficial, it is better to start execution earlier. It is accepted that the initial plan does not cover all the details and that further planning is performed later, during the execution. It is more valuable that in a short while you have a small part of the project work done rather than having a more detailed project plan. Note, we are not saying you shouldn't plan. Planning is still so important for a successful project management. You plan as much as it makes sense to at the start and then further develop or adapt your initial plan as needed. As the Agile founders put it, we plan but recognize the limits of planning in a turbulent environment. 2. Changes. Scope and requirements can be updated during the execution. Even if the list of requirements is agreed at the beginning, it is accepted that it gets updated later on. When a change emerges, instead of protecting the plan through documentation and processes, it will be much more beneficial that resources are quickly directed to whatever creates the most value for the client now. This will ensure that time and project resources are not wasted on work that has for any reason become less important or irrelevant. It is more valuable to have 30% of something useful rather than 100% of something that has become irrelevant. As one of the 12 principles goes, welcome changing requirements even late in development. Agile processes harness change for the customer's competitive advantage. 3. Collaboration. The team is working closely together. The output of any project, the product, service or result is supposed to satisfy someone's needs. This someone is the project client, and in a software project they are represented by the so-called users. On the other hand, we have a project team that creates the project product to satisfy this need. In a software project, this would be the developers. Now, companies, especially big corporations, have rigid structured processes and rigid communication channels. This creates barriers between the users and the developers. These barriers may be even bigger if the users and developers are from two different companies. More often than not, this separation leads to lack of understanding of the requirements, miscommunications, and ultimately unsatisfied users and client. Hence, the principle here suggests not only to break these barriers, but ensure users and developers meet and interact regularly throughout the project. This would ensure that any mismatches between the needs and the actual product coming out are captured on time, and chances for ending up with a product that is not useful are eliminated. As another one of the 12 principles says, business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. That sounds really useful. Let's go to the next lesson and continue learning about Agile at full speed. Next up, Agile project structure. Thanks for watching.
Section 16 and lecture number 85, Agile project structure.
Hello again. In the last lesson, we learned about Agile philosophy and principles. Let's now move to the more tangible side of it, the project lifecycle structure, project product delivery, roles and responsibilities. The beginning of the life cycle of an Agile project would be as we know it. Whenever a project need arises, an organization will go through the typical steps in an initiation phase, assessing the goal, performing feasibility study, calculating the business case, etc. The key difference from life cycle perspective is in the planning and execution phases. Actually, for the purpose of our Agile lessons, it's better to stop thinking about planning and execution as two separate phases. We should instead consider planning and execution as two different project management processes or activities that the project manager performs together with the project team. Okay, back to the life cycle. You can see how this is illustrated for Agile. Note how these two processes, A, do not happen in one go but are broken down. They can start, stop and start again at different times. And B, are not strictly sequenced as in Waterfall, as we understood from the last lesson. As a result, we can see that at the beginning, planning will be performed to a certain extent. It will be performed as much as it would make sense at this stage for the specific project and can be then further developed or adapted at a later stage. Moving on to the execution phase or processes. In an Agile project environment, this part of the project lifecycle is very different from how we know it. Instead of the long single phase, the work is executed through a number of small identical phases. These are called iterations. In each of these mini phases, a specific piece of the project product is created. In this manner, the execution happens step by step, leaving room in between the iterations to review the partial outputs and make any changes to the plan if needed. Note, they all have the same duration, which is usually a few weeks long. From a project manager perspective, each iteration will include a short detailed planning at the beginning and then execution of the planned part of the work. Then, the next iteration will follow, where detailed planning will be performed for the next piece of work and then executed. And so, iteration after iteration until the whole product is created. This is also the reason why a product development method coming from the Agile world is also referred to as the iterative approach. Okay, to finish professionally, we must not forget to have a proper closure phase. This one will follow the same best practices which we are already familiar with. The only thing worth noting is that the lessons learned gathering is not performed only at the end, but after each and every iteration. The project team gathers to discuss what went well and what can be improved in the next iteration. Hence, lessons learned are constantly discussed and improvements implemented. So far so good, but how is the project work monitored and controlled? Well, after each iteration there is a meeting with the project team and the project client, a so-called demo session where the output or the specific piece created is reviewed. Here, we also have the critical control point to assess how the project is progressing. The demo sessions play a key role for the monitoring and control activities, which we have analysed as a separate phase in Waterfall. Now, another very important thing is that between the iterations, changes to the project plan and even project direction are allowed. The subsequent iterations may change their order or their contents according to any new priorities. This is the heart of the Agile principles. It gives the flexibility to adapt the plan and follow the best direction while you proceed with execution. Something much more difficult with a single and long execution phase. Great. That seems very useful indeed, as it broadens our knowledge of how a project can be best structured to deliver its goal. Our description of the Agile project was so far performed from a project management point of view. In the next lesson, we will analyze it from another perspective, putting the project product and scope at the center. See you there.
Section 16 and lecture number 86, Product Development in Agile.
Before we continue, we need to repeat a definition learned at the beginning of the course. A project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service or result, right? Agile methodologies focus on the term product a lot. This will also be the word which we will use when discussing the project output or scope. Okay, let's focus on the project activities which take place during an execution. From theoretical perspective in Waterfall, we have a well-defined and sequenced flow of activities. We complete activity A and then move to B. Once A is completed and B is started, we do not go back to work on A, it is a closed case. After B is done, we continue with C, and so on. In an Agile-based approach, we would have the activities executed in a different way. Each one will be broken down in smaller activities, and the strict sequence of fully completing A before starting B will be removed. The product will be worked on partially during each iteration as per the graph. Let's move to a real-life case so we can understand even better. For instance, when a company is developing a new product, in scope we would have the following activities. Design the product, how it will work, what features it will have, how will it look, etc. Develop or create the product according to the design. Test the product to see how it works in practice and if anything should be corrected before people start using it. As you probably expect, back in the day this project would include these activities in a sequenced manner. In that case, the product can be tested as a whole, only after the whole development work has been done. We get the entire project product in one moment, near to the end of the project. The alternative, suggested by Agile, would structure the work iteration by iteration. First, only a part of the whole product will be designed. This specific part will then be developed and tested. At the end of the iteration, we will have only this part of the product created, but it will be complete and ready to use. And for certain products, such as software, this part may already be something that can be used by the organization, no matter what happens later in the project. With these types of projects, the product is gradually developed and reviewed multiple times during the demos. This also helps the team catch discrepancies early in the project, which reduces the risk of straying away from the actual needs of the customer with a single big bang execution phase. It also gives the customer the opportunity to learn more about the product and to assess what best suits their needs accordingly. They can share their insights and suggest a better solution while the project is progressing rather than just at the end when it may be too late. Wow, that is an impressive way of looking at project work and deliverables. Now we can see how the Agile philosophy and principles translate to the tangible part of project management: life cycle, activities, deliverables, etc. Can you imagine how valuable that flexibility in the project execution is for projects that deal with uncertainties that cannot be well controlled? Last, but definitely not least, we need to learn how the project roles and responsibilities are formed. Although they are not so different from how we know them, a different emphasis is put on some of them. Let's see. Project client. This is probably the central role in any Agile-based project. The client has the critical responsibility not only to define the requirements at the beginning, but to review the output of each iteration, validating whether the output is accepted or not. At the end of the project client has to validate the performance of the end product. During the project, they also dictate what the latest priorities are and inform on any changes, providing the related business-related explanations. The client role often represents the future users of the product being developed. Project team. The project team has the same fundamental importance. They are the ones creating the project scope, as we know. This is the same in Agile, and usually they are referred to as the development team. Except for executing the work, the development team advises on the technical side of the product. How long would each task take, how a change can be implemented, and what the risks may be. Project manager. The project manager is still the accountable person for the project's success, including all knowledge and skills we have studied so far. They govern the iterations and demos, ensuring overall work is on track and that changes make sense from a project point of view, leaving flexibility for adjustments to the work schedule between the iterations. As you can guess, the frequent collaboration between all parties is essential, and project communication, coordination, and status reporting all fall under the project manager's accountability. Alright. We have learned about the Agile philosophy, mindset and principles, how a project lifecycle would be structured under an Agile framework, how the scope and product will be delivered, and what the key project roles and responsibilities are. Awesome work. Various methodologies, practices, tools and techniques stem from the broader Agile domain. In order to gain further expertise in this field and get ourselves ready to lead such a project, we will review in detail the most used methodology coming from the Agile world. Up next, Scrum. Thanks for watching.